Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you to the library here in Cork, to Mickey and to Mark, and for all of you for coming along and being so patient. I think if we were to look out into the world today, I think people are sometimes finding there's an awful lot happening. There are higher oil prices that people seem to be worried about. Rising food prices, that it is said, the rising food prices helped spark trouble in Egypt and Tunisia, which itself drove up to higher energy prices. We see the terrible events in Japan, and almost with all of these things going on, we forget that we're still in the middle of a Eurozone crisis. But somehow, it's almost left the front page. There's a lot going on. And yet, I think if we are here, and we look around, and we say, well, thankfully, we're here, and that's there. We have our safe European home, and our safe corner of our safe European home. And we might look and say, well, you know, we've had an economic crisis, unemployment, all these things that have shook us over the last few years. But at the same time, I think if we were honest with ourselves, we'd also say, it's certainly not a collapse. There's still social welfare being paid. Your money still buys you something. There's food in the shops. Our mobile phone networks are working. Many people still have jobs. Our systems are working. Today I saw the ambulance people and the fire engines arrive and quickly get to work. There's an awful lot that's working and happening. And for most people in the world, if they saw our economic crisis, they would say, well, it's a pretty good crisis to have compared to so many people in the world. That is not in any way to diminish the trauma of what people are feeling, but just to see it relative to not just other people in the world, but to where we've come from, and also as a point to reflect on our expectations of the world. We all carry with us what you might call a world view. It's our mental picture of how the world works, what we expect. And it's a very social thing, so we tend to share each other's worldview, and we might say, for instance, what might be in our worldview? That the economy will recover, for instance. Or that even if we trash our own economy, that the global economy will recover. The rise of China. Or that technology will continue developing. That your pensions are safe. That your insurance can be paid. And this includes not just ourselves personally, but as a society. It's in our investments in our education. How we educate our children implies a view of the world. It says, well, they're going to be more, going into the knowledge future or whatever buzzword of the time. And that's what we teach our children. They'll be interacting global citizens. Why do we have all of these expectations? Mostly they're because we're drawing a history from the past. We're saying, well, what we've had is globalizing growth economies for nearly 200 years. And that has been associated with increasing complexity, increasing knowledge, and new gizmos, new technologies, etc., expanding health service, and kind of generally we assume this is what's going to continue. Now, from the sidelines, for generations, before I was born, people have been saying, but this process that's evolving, that's spreading through the world, growing, complexifying, how it supports greater population, greater resources, greater things, greater bits and pieces, also must, by definition, require energy and resources to grow and spews out waste as a natural byproduct. Now, they said, this can't go on forever because we live in a finite globe. There's not infinite resources. Can we keep infinitely doing this? And some said, time is running out. We can't keep doing this, something will break down. But largely, with our worldviews intact, our worldviews have given us the narrative, oh, don't worry, technology will solve it. Or markets will solve it. Or if only we could get people to realise that would solve it. There's always something to solve it. But meanwhile, everything keeps growing. Everything keeps more population, more goods and services, more and more complex networks that we depend upon. And our greenhouse gases are rising, our waste and landfill, the amount of, even from the north to the Arctic and Antarctic, we find that that purest white snow has a whole pharmacy of chemicals within it. And the other side is energy. You can't grow something and do it on declining energy flows. You and I, we're all energy machines. Wonderful energy machines, exciting energy machines, but that's what we are. We take in food, that's our energy source, and that allows us to do all the things that move and think and walk and run and build and all of these other things. And out of that comes waste. That's just how all energy works. But the difference between us and our globalized economy is that around about 16, 17, 18, we stop growing. And we don't keep eating more and more food until we gobble up, gobble up, gobble up. We level off, and then, constant supply of food. Our globalized economy doesn't, it just keeps growing. That means more and more resource flows. So, when we look now and we say, well, how would we know that we were getting near limits? Say we had a peak in global oil production, when no longer could we keep ramping up oil to support that growing economy, but it started to decline. And what about the food that we eat? That's another key thing. I think energy is a key thing for the whole world, how it works. The other thing would be food. But as our population expands and we eat in much of our arable land is being destroyed, or it's becoming effectively a medium to carry fertilizers, which are made from fossil fuels, we're finding it harder and harder to increase productivity in agriculture globally. And the agricultural produce that we are making has more and more globalized dependencies. By that I mean it requires, we're buying in seeds, we're buying in fertilizers, and even at a level beyond that, it doesn't work. Our global supply chains don't work with nature anymore. We always have what we want in the supermarket. And as seasons change in one place, they rise in another, and seamlessly, without us noticing, all of this dance of complex systems work to ensure that I always have what I want at any time of the year in my supermarket. We ignore it because it's too complex, we don't see it, but it's there. And now we're finding that actually the food prices are rising globally because the three main grains that we rely on, they're kind of like the base of global food production, they're hitting limits of production. And then we have flooding in Russia and other areas that are knocking parts of production off stream, so it's not going onto the global market. So last year, the year gone past, globally, we ate more grains than we produced. The reason we could do this is because we dug into global grain stores. Next year, we could be in a similar situation, but we'd have 17 million more. So bit by bit, it's getting harder. So if we have food and we have energy, the other thing that ties our world together is money. Now, the amazing thing about money is that as our whole globe has become more and more integrated, that in a sense, we no longer have an Irish economy. We no longer have an indigenous economy. What we have is a little thing that's a attached to a globalized economy, and that's why it works. The same for Britain, the same for France, the same for all sorts of other countries. The globalized economy is the economy that works and provides. So it's like saying, as I use the example sometimes, that it's like saying, it's like we're the finger of the globalized economy. And we're unique and different, and we can do this and twig and wig this way and that. But we're only viable because we're connected to everything else.